Welcome to your weekly space of self-indulgence, discovery, and community. I'm your host, Mariah, here to guide you through insights, tips, and stories. Thanks for joining me. Now let's get started. Welcome back to the Self-Indulgent Podcast. I am your host, Mariah, and today we are talking about happiness. And I am here to say that I do not actually want to be happy. That sounds crazy, but I have a lot of thoughts about happiness in general, and I think that changing the definition, the way we see it, the way we view it is really important in understanding what I'm saying right now. So let's start here. What does happiness mean to you? How would you describe it? According to the Oxford Dictionary, it means feeling or showing pleasure or contentment. This is interesting because by saying showing pleasure or contentment, that would insinuate that there's an act involved, or maybe even insinuating that there is a choice. Because if you are showing, you are putting something on display, and we know that we can often fake these states of being all the time. So recently in some of the books that I've been reading, there's that kind of have to do with consciousness, maybe a touch of spirituality. Like, for example, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. There's an emphasis on this idea of whether or not happiness is a choice. And so he writes, do you want to be happy or do you not want to be happy? It's really that simple. He goes on to write, most people don't dare give themselves that choice because they think it's not under their control. Someone might say, well, of course I want to be happy, but my wife left me. In other words, they want to be happy, but not if their wife leaves them. But that wasn't the question. So his point is that we have these really deep-seated preferences for our lives, and then that gets in the way of our happiness. So saying that happiness is then conditional. It's not a constant state of being. So then the better question would be, do you want to be happy regardless of situation, regardless of what happens for the rest of your life? And I didn't just present that to you for you to adopt that way of thinking and being, but if you're more interested in ideas and concepts like that, or just living on a higher spiritual path, then I think that is definitely a good book to get into. It definitely challenges a lot of the ways of thinking. Here, what I'm focusing on here though is whether or not I actually want to be happy all the time. I could think of many times where I've acted like I was happy, or maybe even tried convincing myself that yes, I'm happy, this is what I want, this is happiness. And I think what's even more interesting is that when you ask people, I think there's a lot of people, if you ask what they want out of life or what they want in the future, what they desire in this life is to be happy. That's I think a big answer that I've heard a lot of people say. That was my answer in my adolescent period. I think that was my number one answer. But now happiness is not my goal. I'm not fixated on it. It's no longer what comes to mind when I think of the life that I want and the path that I want to walk on. I'm starting to find it very limiting and also just vague. I think it's just a shortcut answer to not really have to think about it more than you already just did. I can understand maybe wanting to feel contentment in life, but that's not necessarily what I'm chasing. So I want community, connection. I want to help people improve their lives, to make it more worth living, and to just help create change for people. And to bring it back to Michael Singer's point before, it could just be that I'm very scared. Maybe I'm just scared of choosing happiness, because I actually think, in the way he's describing it, it's easier to be pissed off. It's easier to let your thoughts go. It's easier to spiral. It's easier to get fixated on something and all the negative points. Our brains are literally evolved to pay attention to the negative. It takes more mental effort to sit, to pause, to reflect, and to accept what's happening and then say, I'm going to choose to be happy instead. It's just easier to avoid all things than even when it typically causes internal suffering. But to allow yourself to let things run its course and then still choose happiness at the end of the day, that's hard. I think that's really hard, especially in a culture and society that is very bias based, is very beliefs based, where we are identifying heavily with beliefs, more so than values, meaning what I think is right versus like how I'm choosing to live. You know, if it was easy to choose happiness, I would not be a future psychologist. Like the field probably wouldn't exist. And I think the biggest issue is that the way we identify with our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, you know, a belief is what you think is true. It doesn't mean that somebody else is going to think that's true, right? And there's going to be a bunch of different reasons why you think what you're right and what your belief is true. And it has oftentimes a lot to do with our experiences, but somebody else has a different experience. So when we get wrapped so tightly into those things, we can become very closed off. We're less open, less free, and then we have emotions that come in, and then we start heavily identifying with emotions, when in reality the emotions are there to alert us to something. It is information. That is it. That has been the hardest thing for me to learn. To be able, what I'm working more so towards is to be able to allow for the emotions to come, to still feel things like sadness, to still feel things like anger, to still feel the full range of emotions, and then but to not hold on to them, to let them pass. Right? I think looking at it as like collecting data, or just separate yourself and identity from how you're feeling, I think creates an opportunity for a quicker bounce back. Singer's exercise of to use Singer's thoughts as like this exercise to say, hey, take it as a challenge to choose happiness regardless of what's going on, is something I really want to keep in the back of my mind, to like practice resilience and to remind ourselves that we're not our thoughts, and that we're just beings on this earth who happen to experience emotion and life. But my point is to not just stop feeling the negative feelings. First of all, it's just not possible unless you are really enlightened. I'm not enlightened, so I cannot speak to how possible that is, but for the average bear, I want to be able to feel my emotions and not get stuck on them, and to not let it eat at me and hold me back, right? It's just a more realistic goal for myself to say, hey, I'm gonna let myself feel, to be pissed off, but to also to be honest with myself, you know, just not just being pissed off, but like really allowing myself the space to figure out what is it that pissed me off. So like, for example, if somebody said something to me and now I'm pissed, right? And I felt like it was rude. Why? Why did you feel like it was rude? Start getting underneath all that stuff, because honestly, it's just going to get you more in touch and in tune with yourself, who you are, what you care about. And then you really are being honest with yourself about how you feel about things, versus like, I think oftentimes in relationships, whether that be platonic relationships, partnerships, whatever the case is, for people pleasers, for example, right? They're going to deny how it's actually making them feel. And this builds resentment, but then you can't blame nobody but yourself because you weren't exercising your right to say no. And I think that's why it's so important to be in tune with, to not only know something's wrong, but then to pay attention, get curious, and to really understand yourself about what's this blockage? What is this point that is making it really hard for me to let it pass, to let it go? And the sooner I can be real about what's going on, the faster I can move through it, refocus, and keep pushing. We can't do that though if we avoid our feelings or pretend to show up in a way that's not authentic to ourselves. I think it's also likely that a lot of people have gotten obsessed with the idea of happiness. And that's why that is a typical answer to the question that about what do you want in life. And then we beat ourselves up for not feeling that way. Like, oh, I'm doing all the things. I'm eating right. I'm exercising. I'm going on dates. I'm putting myself out there. I'm working really hard at work. I'm journaling, but then I'm still not happy. And I think the disappointment is coming from focusing on the feeling of wanting to just be happy rather than exploring what is actually going to give us meaning, purpose, and connection to what feeds us internally. So if you're not feeling good in life or lit up, here are some things that you should pay closer attention to or that you can do. So one of the longest happiness studies found that positive social connection is one of the most important parts to live a happy, healthy, fulfilled life. So this tells me that if you're not satisfied, if you're not feeling good, maybe we should look at our environment, our social circles, who takes up space in our day, who we're around. I have a whole episode on redefining your friendships and social circles and the people around you. So go check that out if you want more on how to reevaluate your environment and the people who are in your life and whether or not they're meant for you. And so if you're saying, well, I don't really have many people I'm close to. I don't really have any friends. Which I think is a really hard thing, especially for those who are older and are not in situations that force you to be around the same people all the time. Proximity is no longer a thing. Get out there. My response to you is to get out there. And I know that sounds extremely difficult, but some ways that you can go looking for that is what do you care about in your life? What are some of the things that are really important to you? So for example, to me, the gym, so the exercise. So the gym is a great place to potentially meet somebody, even if I'm just saying, hi, I like your outfit, whatever the case is. I think that's a great way to build, because in situations like that also, and which another tip is that I actually heard on the Balanced Black Girl podcast, is making it going to places regularly. Find a place to become a regular, and you'll kind of see, you may bump into people who are also regulars, and that might be another way that you can meet somebody. So for me, I'm a regular at the same gym. Well, it's probably 2 locations, but I'm a regular at those same gyms, and I do tend to see some of the same people when I go in there. So that's a perfect opportunity to meet somebody. And if we're typically end up being there at the same time, usually I could potentially have a workout buddy if that's something that they're interested in. So, and it doesn't have to be that, but that's a perfect example of like, one, how you can find something based on your values or something that is really important to you that you know you're going to show up in, and how you can kind of become a regular somewhere and to just get out and do it. Also, there is a Bumble BFF. I mean, I've heard really great stories from Bumble BFF. That is definitely an option. So I think, find the things that you like, the things that you want to do, go find a place to explore that, become a regular, and shoot your shot. And if you do feel like, you have a pretty okay social circle, but maybe everybody's busy, nobody has time. My friends, we don't ever see each other. Okay, let's make it easier. I used to love when my best friend lived right around the corner from me. Now she lives out of state. Sad, but I loved going grocery shopping with her. Like, that's an errand. Take your friends on errands. If I say I have a whole day where like I decide I want to do my hair and I'm gonna braid my hair, like I can invite a friend over. Shit, you could help me part my hair. I think there are just so many ways. I think we overthink this what we have to do with our friends sometimes, especially as we get older, but we can really just work it into our day-to-day, and it doesn't mean we're giving up time or we're not going to do the things we need to do. But positive social connection is so important for our well-being. And, you know, all the studies are showing that we are just lonely. We are getting more and more lonely, and people reported sadness and loneliness, and it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we have to look for ways to add it into our day to day. And now my friend that lives in another state, when we can, we watch movies together. I need to be a little bit more intentional about setting it up, because I'm busy, right? So there's that excuse. But, you know, having a plan. What we'll do is we'll FaceTime, we'll press play at the same time, and we chatting, we laughing, we watching a movie. Like, and we're just vibing. That don't cost no money. we're just vibing. And then we also constantly send each other voice notes. Every day. There was this TikTok she actually sent me of this girl who was saying, you know, like, as an older adult or a young adult, and everybody lives in different places and everybody's busy and starting their lives, what her friend group does is at the end of every day, they'll send a message or a picture or a voice note of like what they did, what they're up to, what they did that day. And I think that that's amazing. And it doesn't mean that if you're busy and you really can't respond to it in that moment, you know, you get to it when you can. I think the point is to remain connected and to be able to just keep up with each other. My next tip is to be true to yourself and your feelings, kind of like I mentioned before, that come up. Listen to yourself, trust yourself. Stop gaslighting yourself and allowing others to gaslight you. Chances are, if you're gaslighting yourself, there are people in your life that are gaslighting you. You know when something isn't right for you. You know, whether it's a thought or a feeling, and, you know, we're choosing to either ignore it or to take it and to learn from it and adapt, and to get away from the things that aren't serving us. That is going to substantially improve your life and the way, and your meaning and your connection and your day to day. Next, I would say, is to take some risks. Allow yourself to play, allow yourself to be curious, allow yourself to try new things, so you're not stuck in this mundane day to day, and you're less likely to be on autopilot. If you could take one risk a week, that'd be great. And whether it could be anything. Like, for me, I really want to do those like aerial ribbons classes. I want to do one of those. Like, that's a risk, because I could hurt myself, and I've never done that before, and I would be going by myself. Like, all of those things are anxiety inducing for me. So that would be a risk. That's a risk I'm taking. So you have to allow yourself to overcome some of your fears. Show yourself that you can make progress. Show yourself that you can grow. Those are things that are going to give more meaning and fulfillment and enjoyment. You want to be able to change, see your resilience, all those things. Next, prioritize hobbies. Prioritize leisure, activities, hobbies. Actually, a great way to figure out a hobby that you might be interested in is, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Something that is going to maybe use your creative muscles, get those creative juices flowing, whether, use something that you can use your hands, just to be very present, something that, kind of keeps you in the present moment, that is fun for you. Definitely prioritize that. Next is rest. Resting, and that means getting at least 7 hours of sleep. Pay attention to your signs of burnout. Don't let yourself get and it's so funny. I was listening to a podcast episode today, and it talked about stress and burnout, and that we don't necessarily crack under the pressure. So if we have crazy things going on at work and these crazy work hours, it's actually not the pressure. We don't crack then. We don't crack in the moment. Typically, we don't crack in the heat and thick of it. we crack later on. We crack when it's over and we fall apart. So to avoid that fall apart, we have to get better at noticing our signs. So for me, I know that I'm getting burnt out when I am more inclined to just want to turn my brain off at the end of the night for 5 hours. If if I am getting home at 5 o'clock, and I talk about this in the previous episode about how to get unstuck when you know you're in a rut. So if you want more on that, listen to that episode. But I talk about, wanting to be on the couch until the end of the night and to just turn my brain off and zone out. If you are finding that you want to zone out for more than maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day, then that could be a burnout sign for you. That is definitely a burnout sign for me. It's like, I'm not happy with what's going on. I don't have a good balance of rest because clearly zoning out for hours I don't feel any better. So that's not doing anything. So pay attention to those signs. Next, finally, and this is like one of my favorite things now that I'm trying to implement more and remind myself of and to keep doing, is to have a bad day plan. Have a bad day plan. What does that mean? So, for example, I am somebody who really struggles on rainy, gloomy days. I hate them. I want to sleep. I'd rather just sleep the whole day until it's sunny again. Like, I hate gloomy days. There's an energy thing there for me. It doesn't go right. It doesn't go well. And it makes me so unproductive and honestly just sad. It just makes me sad. It's hard for me to get going, all that stuff. And so this is what I mean, though, before I get more into that, this is what I mean by being in tune with yourself and getting to know yourself. Knowing that these days are harder for me allows me the opportunity to get ahead of it, to make it less hard for myself. So I've started looking at the weather more frequently. And now I can try to support myself a little bit better on these harder days. And so for you, it could look like you work with somebody, you have to work with somebody you really don't like, that really sucks your life away, like once a week, or it's like this one day a month and you know that it's coming. If you know that, you have an opportunity to set up your day so that it is not as bad, so it is not as soul-sucking as it could be. And of course, we have unplanned bad days, right? Like there are, days where we don't know it's going to be a bad day, right? Like, obviously, we can't always predict a bad day, but we can do things on days that did end up being bad, and we can pull from a toolbox, if you will, something that will make it a little less bad at the end of the day if it was this really unplanned what the fuck a day. So you can set up your day to have small things that bring you comfort. If I know a gloomy day is coming, I will try to get certain things done that on other days. So for example, like I will probably be less likely, I mean, obviously, unless it's like a week straight of rain, but that rarely happens. I will try to do school-related work or client-related work that is not the funnest thing in the world. I will try to set my schedule up for the week to do those on the days that it's like I have a little more energy, or when it's sunny, when I know it's probably like my energy will be a little lifted. And then I will maybe do the funner stuff. So like planning this podcast, because then or filming, because then I'm going to do my makeup and I'm going to get ready, and those are things that naturally kind of uplift the spirit anyway. And so it's kind of just really being strategic so you can really optimize your energy and also take care of yourself when you're not feeling 100%. And then maybe on that gloomy day, I choose to order food or go out with a friend to get a quick lunch or something like that, to just things that make me feel good. And then, I don't have to worry about cooking, because that can be really tedious. And I can conserve more energy. Or maybe I just schedule a phone call with a friend, because that will help distract me, and I can be on the phone and be productive doing something, and that'll just kind of get me going. Like, these are all things that I know work for me. You got to figure out what works for you and use that to your advantage. And then also know what doesn't work for you and use that information to your advantage. So when you really think about it, all the things that I just brought up are like habits. They're habits, they're lifestyle-esque things. They're different ways of living and looking at the cards you've been dealt, what you have to do, how to be productive. Like, they're all these little daily habits to make your day to day easier, more enjoyable, so you can keep prioritizing yourself and what matters to you. That, I think, is more important than just the goal of happiness. Because, okay, I want to be happy. Okay, so how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that if you only feel good about 5% of the week? With the way that life works, how are you going to do that, right? So I just think that it's so much more than that. Like, let's not get caught up in this happiness obsession. I think we need to be more strategic and think of a more holistic lifestyle approach to just kind of remembering what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what fulfills us, what doesn't fulfill us. And this is all just being more in tune with yourself and understanding who you are, what lights you up, so that you can be more consistent. Of course, you're going to feel the full range of emotions. Of course, you're going to have bad days. But how can I be more consistent in living a life that I want to, and that I'm going to want to wake up for? It's so much more than just like, I want to be happy. Like, it's complex. And so that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. My reflection question for you: what does happiness actually mean to you? And what might be another way to frame what you're looking for in life? Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. Share, download the episodes. That's what matters for whatever reason. And have a blessed and intentional week.